I'm Patricia Neals, and I'd like to talk about History 282, which I've developed as an online course. I have several courses online, and I chose this one for probably no particular reason, except that unlike the other courses, it does have one other added dimension, and that is a TV component. It was originally, well, not originally, but in another life, perhaps we can say, it was offered as a cable course. But as the cable classes were becoming perhaps somewhat less popular, but the online classes were becoming more popular, I decided that I would redesign this class and make it, in a sense, both, or make the TV cable part as an option part of it. In developing the course, originally I worked with a number of people at the Media Center, and they helped me certainly with a lot of the technology in terms of how to set up the course. I of course, had some of my own ideas as well. I've previously, in a previous life, you might say, I worked as a curriculum development specialist for the Department of Education at the high school level, and so I'm familiar with a lot of the educational theories that emphasize things like collaborative learning, about making sure the students not only develop a large a body of content information, but also learn something about the process of acquiring more information through whether it's through collaborative learning or through individual kinds of activities. I've also and so I try to include collaborative strategies in teaching and learning process, and but I also emphasize individual accountability through whether it's tests specifically or other forms of assessment. I believe that you can see the same screen that I'm looking at right now, and you can see that in Laulima I'm using a number of tools. Among them are the announcements. I use that a lot, particularly in the beginning, because although I have also a syllabus available, I find that students often don't read it carefully, and redundancy is a very good teaching learning tool. If the students are presented with information or guidelines in various kinds of ways, that's a good thing. When I was working with curriculum development for the Department of Education, we often got into debates as to what was more important, the content or the process. In other words, should a teacher be a sage on a stage or a guide on the side? And I have to admit, I don't think that one is necessarily better than the other. I think they're both important. There have been a number of scholars, including Pascarella and Terenzini, who emphasize that the best teachers are well organized and outlined the objectives and the criteria for the course in a very succinct, clearly understood sort of way. And so you'll see in my list of tools here for Laulima, I don't have a lot of them. There's many more that are available, but I determined that for my course, with my teaching strategies and philosophies, this is enough. This is about right. I've got a set of resources besides making announcements from time to time to remind the students of exams or what the requirements are and so forth. I've also got a folder of resources. For this particular class, I haven't made it available to the students. That's my resources. But I have modules, as you see down here, that link to it, and I'll say more about that momentarily. The site information has a number of has a menu up here that I use where I can, with the page order, I can turn on or off certain tools that, as you see, if the light bulb's off, it means I use them, but the students don't. And but it's nice to have those available. we do use, I have a forums. I use the forums for the students to post their assignments. And because this is a community college level course, I have a lot of assignments, as you see listed here. If we can scroll down. Oh, sorry, it's kind of on the margin. Oh, yes, I see it now. Okay, scrolling down. For one semester, you see there are 29 assignments. So it's quite a lot of, 29 lessons, you might say. They're not really chapters in a book. I don't follow a book precisely because I like students to use a wide variety of resources and not become dependent on just one of them. But at any rate, they post their assignments here. You can see we've got 64 messages. Those are basically assignments. And they also can post replies, and in fact, they're required to do that. And so they do generally 2 of those a week. And then I give them points for their assignments, and that's a kind of a reward for them to continue on. But I don't want to talk about this in too much detail right now since we're only on the first question regarding development, so rather I'll stick to more of an overview. I have a grade book where they get their grades on a weekly basis, so they're constantly getting feedback in that sense, or kind of a reward for doing their work. Every week they can see their scores adding up. I have a mail tool. This one is linked to the hawaii.edu, so it's another way to communicate with them. The messages is an internal kind of email or way to communicate with the students. So I usually do both. If I've got what I feel is an important message for them in general, I email them through the hawaii.edu one, but also the internal Laulima messages. I use both of them. They get the same message in both ways. The modules is like an outline of what they're going to be doing. And so here you see that for this basically, as in the forums, if you recall, the same topics were there. Ordeal of Reconstruction. This is a course in American history, and this refers to the first topic that we talk about, that is the Reconstruction period after the destructive Civil War. They get a handout that summarizes the essential content for that particular lesson. And they also have an assignment that tells them what to do. The assignment, oh, maybe it won't show up here in the view form, or will it do? Maybe I have to click on view first. We'll see. We'll see if this comes up. Okay, I think now it'll show up. So hopefully the handout will show up. The handout basically is like it comes from a PowerPoint presentation that I created for each lesson. And the PowerPoint presentation shows pictures relevant to the topic. I have a Macintosh and it seems to work a little bit differently. But see if this, try again. Maybe I have to scroll down to see it. I always forget on IBM the left click, right click kind of thing for one thing. Oh, sorry. I just I did. Oh, here we go. All right. So, and is this the bar to scroll? Here? Oh, okay. All right. So, ordeal reconstruction, as you see. It has pictures. It has on the side, it's got places to take notes, and there's notes included, my own notes as well. Basically, again, it's a summary of the essential content for that particular lesson. Then in addition to that, if we go back to the modules, the outline form, you'll see that they also have an assignment. Hopefully this will come up a little bit more quickly. Oops, I forgot to click on the view first. I learned that belatedly, that I need to do the view if I want to see what the students see. And so for the assignment, as a part of my philosophy of keeping things consistent and well organized. The format of each assignment is the same. Every single time they will be asked to look at a list of key terms related to that topic. So this is Reconstruction of the South after the Civil War. At the end of this lesson, the student should be able to identify and tell the historical significance of the following terms. And how do they come to do that? Well, they look at the PowerPoint presentation or the video, that in this case be the TV video related to this topic. The handout is exactly the same as the PowerPoint presentation. I tried it in both forms by empathizing the PowerPoint slides and then also with the handout. The handout so far seems to work more easily in terms of technology. But in any case, that summarizes it. The video gives them information in more detail. And then they choose 3 of these terms. They write paragraphs about them. And they have to take notes from the PowerPoint, and they have to take notes from their textbook, so it makes sure they also use the textbook, 2 different sources of information. And they have to write personal questions or comments that reflect critical thinking about the textbook notes or PowerPoint presentation. And I think that's a real important element. So that we make sure that they are reflecting on what they're learning and are constructing new ideas and new information based on what they've known before. And they do an assignment and they give a reply to a previous student. But again, I think I'm getting into too much detail here. We have other questions to cover, so I'm going to leave that. I think you've got the main idea as far as the development, and we'll look at other things. This is Pat Niels again, and I'm going to talk now about course delivery. As you'll see as we go along, some of these questions tend to be redundant, or it's hard to know where to start because they're all interrelated. But basically what I was talking about before is certainly related to course delivery. And so we were looking at the modules, and as I was explaining, basically the modules look the same, except that this list of key terms keeps changing. So it becomes very predictable for the students, and they compliment me over and over again that they like that. It's less frustrating for them to kind of know what to expect. And so again, they look at I try to get them to look at a number of sources, the PowerPoint presentation. They have to take notes from their textbook. That makes them continually using the textbook as a resource. The textbook includes some original documents from history, so that they're not only studying from secondary sources but using primary sources as well. And that is one of the principles that I believe in, that they should not only study history, they should do history, be a historian, and examine those original documents. And then with the personal questions and comments, this is where they really show that they can use the prior knowledge that they had and construct new understandings and thus enhance their learning. They also work collaboratively because they're going to post these assignments in a forum, and then they have to reply for every assignment. So that's 2 replies per week. I have a lot of students in the class, so they have a lot of options about who they're going to reply to. They can choose anyone from the class. And then finally there's an evaluation, and so here we get back to the individual accountability again. There's quizzes in the tests, tasks, and surveys that they can take. I don't give answers for the quizzes because I don't want it to be spoon-fed. They'll do the quizzes. They can do the quizzes over and over again, but they have to find the answers themselves, much of which are in the PowerPoint presentations or in the textbooks or other sources that are available to them. All right, I believe we're ready to next. I'm going to talk now about collaboration and interaction in my classes. I've already mentioned that we have the forums, and students post 2 assignments to the forums every week. They also reply to each other's messages, so that's a way in which they interact with each other. They also, of course, have the messages and the mail tool where they can interact with each other and with me, and of course they can also phone me. As far as other collaborative ways in which my students interact with each other or with materials is through a study guide that I give them that has Wikipedia links to it. Wikipedia is not the best source of information, but it certainly is one source, and it is I think a good supplement to the textbook and to the PowerPoint presentations that I give. And another good, although Wikipedia is often criticized for not having reliable information, on the other hand, particularly in a social studies type subject, I think that there is no canon of information, but rather because it's a social science, it's not that precise, and it's good for students to hear different opinions. It's good for them to even hear contradicting information so that they can make up their own mind. Wikipedia does also give them links to other websites. It lists other texts, other scholarly sources of information, books and magazines, and so forth. And so that's another way that they can interact with their with the materials. And I think that covers that. This is course design learning materials, and again, many of these questions or topics are somewhat redundant, but I'll just reiterate. In my classes, for this particular class, students have the TV where I explain in detail with the TV programs all the topics that they are expected to learn about. In addition, they have handouts that summarize the essential points, the main ideas that they will be tested on. And in addition to the handouts, I have a list of key terms for each lesson that they work on, and the key terms are linked to Wikipedia, which gives them still more information, so that's an added source of information for them. They have quizzes that they can do that ask questions about those key terms, and basically they're expected to be able to identify and tell the historical significance of each of the key terms. And when they take the exams, there are 3 exams, and when they take the exams, again, the questions, if not exactly the same, they'll be similar to the questions that they had previously found the answers to on their own. So, and then of course they have the textbook as an added source of material, but that's about it. I'm going to talk now about assessment and learning outcomes. Again, this may be somewhat redundant. I'll try to not make it too much so. But in any case, again, we have the quizzes, and as you see here in task tests and surveys, there's a quiz for every single lesson, and they can do these quizzes over and over and over again. They're untimed and unlimited how many times they do it, but they do have to find the answers themselves, and I won't give that to them because I don't want them to simply memorize one-word answers. I'm a firm believer that students should learn content, not just process, as a part of their education. And so these quizzes summarize the essential content. You notice at the bottom that there are also 3 exams. And these are longer. They include questions from the quizzes, as well as there may be a few others besides. But pretty much if they do those quizzes and master the quizzes, they should do very well on the exams as well. Now, all of these exams and all of the quizzes are multiple choice. But there are ways to design questions, even multiple choice questions, that require critical thinking just in the way that they're worded, particularly what I call not questions, which of the following is not true. They have to examine each of the statements very carefully to come up with the correct one. But I also, this is not the only way that I assess their achievement. I also, of course, with the forums, when they post their assignments, I look at those assignments, and basically those assignments will consist consist of 3 paragraphs each, and based on 3 different key terms. And so I can see how they choose information. I can see how they synthesize the information from various sources. I can see how they are able to do some critical thinking when they add their personal questions and comments at the end of each of those 3 paragraphs. And also I can evaluate their reply. When they reply to each other, in a sense, they're assessing each other too. They comment on the content of each other's work, but they can also comment on the quality of it. And so in that sense, they are assessing each other. Sometimes in email format, I will ask them other questions like, what did you find particularly interesting about this lesson? What was confusing? What would you like to learn more about? I got that tip, you might say, from some of the sources on educational theory, particularly the one, I think it's known as CATS. It's the it's particularly designed for community colleges, different forms of assessment, and that along with a number of other strategies that I've used. So the students do assess each other, and I assess them in different kinds of ways. In a kind of an exceptional circumstance, I will allow students to not take one of the exams, but to do some other project instead. That's not listed in the syllabus, but if they call me, it's difficult to arrange, so I don't advertise it. But if a student tells me that they are having a particular problem, I do believe in multiple intelligences. I do believe that students learn in different ways. And so if this way that I've outlined just isn't working for a student and they feel that they should be assessed in some other kind of way, I give them quite a few different options. They could, for example, write a research paper. They could do some kind of exhibition or display. They can make a mobile hanging from a ceiling to illustrate the knowledge that they've acquired. They can do some kind of webbing or outlining. They can do some kind of a media presentation, make a DVD or a CD, something like that. But that, and then as far as sharing it with the other students, I haven't yet mastered a way that they can share it online. I'm sure it can be done, but I do teach also live classes, and if they're able to come to campus and present it to the class, that would be still another way or an enhancement of that kind of assessment. They can either present it to me only, or they can present it to a class. I'm going to talk now about course design. Again, as you see on the left, I've got these tools. It's not a bunch of tools, and everything is clearly outlined. I've already showed you the modules that have handouts and activities in them. I've shown you the quizzes that the students can take, and so it always follows the same topic. Lesson 1 is Ordeal of Reconstruction. They can find that topic in tests, tasks, and surveys. They can find that topic as a forum topic. They can find it as an activity topic, and so everything fits nicely together. It's real clear to them where they're at and what we're talking about. I have displayed here the Wikipedia link. So again, it shows the list of key terms that they need for each lesson. These very same key terms are listed in their activities, where it asks them to choose 3 of them. But and this, by the way, was a collaborative project too. As you might imagine, it takes a long time just to find all these appropriate links for each of the key topics. And so I actually had some students help me when I was designing this. So maybe we can click on one. Does anyone strike you as interesting? Let's pick one. Someone said, well, don't use controversial topics with you, but history just has controversial topics. So maybe Ku Klux Klan was canceled because that would be undoubtedly a controversial one. It worked the last time I tried it, so maybe, I don't know. We'll see if that works now, but I assure you it works for the students, and it works when I try it at home. But naturally, when oh, that's okay. Maybe it's Oh, okay, there we go. Andrew Johnson, good topic. So you see, if we scroll down there, you see it not only gives information, but look at all the links within this topic. And again, maybe it isn't all 100% pure, unadulterated truth, but what in history is. And so I find this to be an excellent source. It's got so many more visuals in it. It's got all these links to anything that could possibly be related to President Andrew Johnson, whom you know took over after President Lincoln was assassinated. And then usually at the end, they also have a list of other resources, whether videos they can go to or books they can read, scholarly studies, and so forth. But again, I believe that my class is particularly well organized and yet at the same time provides a wide sources of information. I'm going to talk now about student support. When students come to this class, it seems as if I've been teaching online for quite a few years, and it seems as if every year the students become more and more sophisticated in handling Laulima, or it used to be WebCT that we used. And I used to, at the beginning of each semester, offer a special forum or session for those that weren't familiar where they could come and I would describe how Laulima works. I don't have a general, generic kind of session like that anymore. It doesn't really seem to be necessary. And even then, not very many students came attended that. But now I find that occasionally there is a student that has problem with technology, and I will generally they come to me first, and I will help them to the extent that I can. If they have questions that I can't answer as far as the technology, then I refer them to the Educational Media Center or to the help desk or to the Laulima support. And so they again they can contact me or others through the obvious ways: the mail tool, the messages, the phone. And I put a note to that effect in the syllabus also. So that's pretty much how I try to help them. And finally, for the final topic, I'd like to talk for a moment about teaching innovation. If I would put my name on anything in particular, of course, I haven't really seen other classes, perhaps snippets of them, but not that much. And I'm hoping that through this process, I can learn from other teachers that they will be presenting things and I can add innovations or add to my class. But specifically, the one thing that I think that I do that is perhaps unique is that I don't rely on any one particular textbook. And I think that that's important because, number one, textbooks are very expensive. And when teachers do follow a textbook, I feel like they can become too dependent on it, and the students then become too dependent on it too. And so I've developed an essential, what I regard as an outline of essential content for the classes that I teach: world history and, in this case, American history. And after I retire or at any point, if any other teacher wanted to use these materials, I think they would find them very useful because they don't follow a prescribed, published pattern that might change at the whim of a publisher, but rather it is very easy to modify my classes in many different ways. If another teacher, for example, wanted to use this course and they may disagree as to what is the essential content, it's so easy to just delete some of those key terms, add more key terms to it, to change the assignments and so forth. So I think that's one of my innovations, that I've customized the course and made it very flexible for others to use, both students and teachers alike. Another thing that I think that my course is good at is synthesizing different sources of information. You've already seen the Wikipedia links and the vast array of links within those links that students can go to. And they are encouraged to not just quote information or to copy what they've read in the textbook or in the Wikipedia or in my handouts, but in those daily assignments, they're asked to synthesize that information, to put it together and make a meaningful paragraph out of it, and then to add their own personal comments and questions that show that they are really thinking critically about it, and again, not just kind of mindlessly copying it down. And then finally, I don't know if it's really an innovation, but an aspect of my course that I'm particularly proud of is the organization of it. It may not, at first glance, for someone just briefly looking at it, may not seem so, but students compliment me over and over again. They like the way, although there's a lot of assignments, it keeps them on task to have to submit two of them every week, and the fact that they follow the same format every time. So sometimes in the beginning, students may seem confused or frustrated. It doesn't seem to, they are not sure what's expected of them, but my expectations for them remain the same. So in the grade books, I give them the points, and but there's also a place where we can put comments if they haven't fulfilled the requirements, if they haven't taken some notes from their textbook or haven't added some critical thinking comments, then in the note box I will let them know. And it's always a pleasure for me to see how their assignments improve as the course goes on, and they see the expectations become clearer and clearer to them. So again, the organization of the course, I think, is very clear and one of the finer aspects of the classes that I teach, and the fact that it can be taught without following a textbook precisely. Students can use a wide variety of sources and learn how to synthesize information from a wide variety of sources. I guess that's it.